So we'll be mainly in last part of Matthew 16, then 7, or last part of 17 maybe, and then 18. It's also a little bit in Mark 9 and Luke 9. So if you're going to Matthew 16, 17, there, well, it's kind of where we'll be. So I got our disclaimer up. I got to have that on. Oh. Tardy Bell is going to bring everybody in. We're getting worried there for a few minutes. Now we doubled in size all of a sudden. Okay, got this period of retirements. We've been through 3 of them. We're in the 4th one now when Jesus goes away from the area of Galilee to get away from with his apostles so he can concentrate on teaching them. Actually, time-wise, we are in the fall, almost to the fall of the time before Jesus will die next spring. So we got just over 6 months left. When we get into what we call the close of the ministry period, that'll be like the last 6 months. And we'll get that, I think, next lesson. So we're just 7 months, roughly, time out from actually Jesus' death. So that's how much time he has left to spend with these apostles. So they were in Bethsaida, the Sea of Galilee, went up to Caesarea Philippi. We had that last time. It's one of the shots from up there, the headwaters of the Jordan, in that area. And that's where he asked them, who do men say that I am? And they named John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah, or some of the prophets. But who do you say I am? And Peter spoke up and said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Then he said, based on that, you're Peter, and on this rock I'll build my church. We talked about that. The church being the called out assembly, and these passages we talked about, called out of darkness into just light, called out to be its own special people, called out the gospel, called in one body. So the church and what it is, we talked about that verse a little bit. And then he told them he's going to be killed. Don't tell anyone yet that I'm the Christ. Peter just confessed that. They don't want that out yet because it's not time for people to know that from the standpoint of him being killed. Don't tell the word out to the Jews. Going to Jerusalem, suffer many things, be killed. Raised the 3rd day. Peter said, no, that's not going to happen. And he put Peter in his place then after that. So he takes Peter, James, and John up the high mountain, probably, I think, Mount Hermon. That's kind of close to where they were. Some controversy question about that, since none of us really know. A couple of shots from Mount Hermon, the snow cap on it. And then there Jesus was transfigured. He was changed. His appearance was changed. And same word, we get metamorphosis, changing the caterpillar to the butterfly. You've heard that before. We'll get a little bit more about that change, another slide here in a minute. The same word that used that we're transformed by the renewing of our minds, Romans 12, same word there, same concept. Not conformed to this world, but changed, transformed by the renewing of your mind. So John, writing about this later, when he wrote his gospel, which was written later than the other 3, said, we beheld his glory. The glory is the only begotten Father, full of grace and truth. We beheld his glory. John was there. John saw that transfiguration. John saw what Christ looked like in that glorified state. And John wrote about it later. This is the words he used to describe that there. So Moses and Elijah appear there with Christ on that mount when Christ is in this glorified, transformed state. So Peter sees that and suggests building 3 booths, something like this maybe, one for each one of them. And then the thing about about Moses and Elijah being there, Moses was of course, the giver of the law, the Jewish legislator, and the prophets there were represented by Elijah. And now they've both come there to, as it were, symbolically end any influence they had over the people, and that's going to be Jesus. So while the 3 of them are there, the cloud comes over them, and the voice comes out and says, this is my beloved Son, whom I am well pleased. Hear him. And the 3 disciples there, the 3 apostles, are just falling down in fear and terrified. Think about what you would be like if you were one of those 3 sitting there and you saw this all happening and you heard this voice. I don't know what it sounded like. None of us do. But in Revelation, when John's writing about the voice he heard of Jesus when he saw into heaven in Revelation 1, remember what it sounded like? The voice of roaring waters, many waters, like a big waterfall going over this roaring sound. Can you imagine this voice coming from heaven? Yeah, we'd probably all fall down to our knees too and try to sink ourselves into the ground. Something like that would happen. And we just seen Jesus like this. And these two guys have been dead for years, come back to life, and now this voice speaks from heaven. I mean, just being there would be something else. Something else. Hear him ties right into what the writer of the Hebrew letter says when we were instructed in times past by our fathers were by the prophets, but now in these latter days, we're spoken to us by his son. Ties right in with that. So this I can't before we got to last time when I stopped. There's this feeling among some that since we're to hear Christ, hear him, that the only thing we need to look at in the Bible is what's in quote unquote red letters. If you happen to have a red letter edition where all the Jesus words are in red, then that's all that matters because we're to hear him. Well, let's kind of talk about that. Let's debunk that a little bit if we can. We have stuff out of Luke chapter 9 tonight. Luke chapter 10, which will be coming up shortly, Jesus sends out the 70. And he tells them, he who hears you hears me. So what do you mean by that? He who hears you hears me. In other words, where did they get, where did the 70 get the words they're going to speak? They got them from Jesus, right? Because he had been teaching them, now he's sending them out. So he who hears you, when you speak, what are they hearing? They're hearing what I spoke to you. They're hearing my words delivered to them by you. He who hears you hears me. Okay. 2 Peter chapter 1. Prophecy didn't come by the will of man, but holy men of God spoke as they were moved by what? The Holy Spirit. What did we get over to John 14, 15, 16, 17? Where did the Holy Spirit get what it told the people, the writers to write? Jesus said, I am telling you what the Father told me, and I have passed it on to the Spirit to deliver to you. What's the nutshell of what's in those chapters there in John. We'll get to a little later on. So again, Jesus is speaking what the Father told him. It's passed on down through that. 2 Peter 3, Peter's writing about Paul. Paul's written to you and all of his epistles, things that are hard to understand, where people twist them and turn them to their own destruction as they do the rest of the scriptures. What's he doing? He's equating Paul's writings to the rest of the scriptures. So all of them tied together, linked together. That's more important than the others. And then, of course, all scripture is given by inspiration of God. So just a few things there to get us thinking about. It's not just the red letters. It's all delivered to us through Christ, through the Spirit, to the inspired writers. All right, there are 3 points from the Transfiguration we need to stop and think about for just a minute. One of them shows Christ's deity, shows that he was God as he's transfigured there before them. The second thing is the end, we've already mentioned, of the Jewish covenant is clearly shown by the Transfiguration. And the other thing then is this glorified position that Jesus will have when he goes back to the Father after his resurrection. So look here, the deity. This is my beloved Son. God speaking, this is my Son. He's deity. He is God. He is my Son. And then who are you going to hear? Not Moses and Elijah anymore, but now we're going to hear him. And then back to what happens when he was transfigured, when his face shone like the light, like the sun, and his garments became white as light. That glorified state, that's where he's going back to as we get more and more. As he starts talking about later on, we'll get to it, the actual death and resurrection. He tells God, I've glorified you, now you glorify me and the actions I'm doing with this. So that glory is part of it here of what's going to come later when he fulfills his mission on earth and tells God, okay, I've glorified you on earth, now you glorify me as I'm raised and send it back to you. So 3 things we pick up here directly from what we see on the Transfiguration. All right, thoughts about what happens here with the Transfiguration anymore? That really should have been last lesson. So we're kind of trying to catch up here a little bit. He tells them again in the last part here of Matthew chapter 17, after the transfiguration, about his death. They don't have it yet. They don't understand it yet. So he keeps telling them more and more over and over. So verses 22 and 23, while they were staying in Galilee, they're back down to Galilee now from where they were up on the mountain. Jesus said to them, the Son of Man is about to be betrayed to the hands of men. They will kill him. The third day he'll be raised up. And they were all sorrowful about it. Why are they sorrowful about it? Well, I don't really know. Back to the illusion of the king that we talked about earlier after the feeding of 5,000, is that the very fact that their friend, is going to be gone, going to be killed, and whatever that was said about. I don't know. I don't know if they did. Mark adds to it there, they didn't understand. They still don't understand what's going to happen to him. Maybe go and be killed because they know the Pharisees and Sadducees don't like him, but this raised up on the third day. Mark indicates that they don't understand what's going on with that just yet. So, having said all that, now we get ready for lesson 7. We are tonight supposed to be. So now they're back over in Capernaum. So they've come back down to the area of Galilee. Of course, Capernaum is where they go. That's kind of the headquarters place. What Jesus, after he left Nazareth, several lessons back, we talked about that. A couple of shots of that area. We've seen this before. They're on the northwestern coast of the Sea of Galilee. There. So at the end of chapter 17 of Matthew, Peter's approached and he's asked, does your master pay the half shekel temple tax? And this is some coins that represent the half shekel here. A couple of them, they say actually coins from Tyre here. But Peter's asked this, and it goes back to something in the law from Exodus that every male over 20 years old, rich or poor, it doesn't matter, they all pay the same. They all pay this half shekel temple tax every year, which would go into maintaining and providing for the temple. Now, we've got to get a couple of thoughts in mind here a minute. The temple of who? Who's the temple for? God. Okay, it's Jehovah God. It's the Father. It's where the Jews go to worship God. Okay, it's his temple. They're going there to worship him, not one of the false gods, but the one there to worship him. That's important. It's an important fact we need to know when we get here. The next part. So Peter replied, yes, he does. They asked Peter this question, does your master pay the temple tax? Sure he does. So he walks into the house then, and Jesus anticipates what's going on, what Peter's about to say. So he asked him, Peter, and take yourself out of this one particular incident here and just think in general terms for a minute. Peter, who pays taxes to the king? The king's sons, or strangers? Or you might say the king's sons, or just the common people? Who pays taxes to the king? What's the obvious answer? The strangers or the common people, not the king's sons. Who has Peter just confessed Jesus to be? The Son of God. What temple tax are they paying? The temple tax for God's temple, right? So why is Jesus obligated to pay tax to that temple, right? It's his Father's temple. Because the sons don't pay temple tax. The sons don't pay taxes. They don't pay taxes. See the angle he's coming at here. And he's kind of making Peter, well, why would I pay temple tax to my Father's temple? But he says, so we don't upset them, go cast a hook in the sea, find the first fish you get, take the coin out, and go pay the tax for you and me. He makes a point to Peter first. I think it's a point we probably just kind of read through and don't grasp as we go through there if we're not careful. That Jesus really shouldn't be paying the temple tax. It's his temple. His Father's temple. So a little short piece there about that. And by the way, Matthew's the only one who records this. Why would he record this? He's a tax collector. This kind of thing that's on his mind. The other Gospels don't mention this at all. So now move to chapter 18. And the apostles are having a discussion. Well, you might call it discussion. They're having a pretty deep discussion, apparently, about which one's the greatest. Who's the greatest in the kingdom? And Jesus knows, of course, what they're doing, what's going on. So he asks them about it. And they don't want to answer it. Because maybe that's something, it's they're kind of embarrassed, like to say, well, that's what we were discussing. He's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. They know he's not going to like that, obviously. But a little sideline point here. If Peter had been given some special position, back in Matthew chapter 16, when he confessed that Christ is the Son, and you were Peter, on this rock I'll build my church, if that had been given Peter some special preeminent position, why have this discussion? It's already been answered. So Peter wasn't given some preeminent special position, as some would take that verse to use it to show. Get the point? You understand? Why have a discussion about who's the greatest if Peter's already been shown, based on what Jesus told him back there in Matthew 16, that he's the greatest. He's the one that's going to be the Pope. Okay? That's the way to use that word. So, sideline point. Jesus answers him. Said, he who would be the greatest in the kingdom, which is not yet established, the kingdom's coming, must become as a little child. He gets the child and sits there. So he says, he who will become greatest in the kingdom must become like this little child. So the question then, how do you become like this little child? How do we become like this little child? We will be great in the kingdom. We got to be like this little child. How do we do that? How did he tell them to do that? He answers the question himself in the very next line here. Verse 4. He who humbles himself as this little child will be greatest in the kingdom of heaven. He who humbles himself. Not he who's going to climb the corporate ladder and be big dog up here. No. And what's one of the things that comes to your mind? What Jesus did later on at that supper right before his death, when he got down on with a towel and washed all their feet, humbled himself. Okay, he's going to show them then. Now he's telling them. Later on, he's going to show them what this means. A couple of quotes here about that. He will be the greatest. He will be the greatest who has the least idea that he's great. He will be great who has the least idea that he is great. Why? He's just a humble servant doing his job. Unless they accepted the status of a nobody, quote, they couldn't even enter the kingdom, much less be great in it. Why? Remember this? Whoops. I got it on here. Next slide. See it in a minute. He who wants to be first will have to become a servant to all. I got that. So Jesus said, if you receive this little child in my name, you receive me. If you receive me, you receive the one who sent me. You got to become like the little child. You got to humble yourself. We have to humble ourselves like this little child here. I've got a piece on one of these slides. I thought I had it back on that one. If we don't hear it, I'll tell you about it anyhow, okay? John comes up and says, we saw someone who does not follow with us casting out demons in your name. Now, the implication is it worked. I mean, they cast out demons in his name. So my first question that comes to me is, where did they get the power to do that? If they weren't following with them, they weren't part of the disciples, how did they get the power to cast that demon out in the first place? I don't know the answer to that. Okay. But John said, we told him to stop. You shouldn't be doing that. You're not one of us. Jesus says, no, don't tell him to stop. Because he who is not against us is with us. Says, don't tell them to stop, because they're not going to do a miracle in my name today and then turn around tomorrow and do what? Speak evil about me. So don't tell them to stop. If they're doing things for me, keep them on our side. Don't tell them to stop and make them stop that stuff. So it comes down to, he said, he who is not against us is on our side. Or better stated, Matthew 12, a little further back, he who is not with me is against me. So the point is, there's no middle ground. Jesus said, you're with me or you're against me. If you're with us, you're not against us. If you're against us, you're not with us. So there's no indifference. There's no sitting here riding the fence. If you're riding the fence, you're not with us. That's what he's saying here. So no middle ground. Either you're with us or you're against us. I'm just cracking right on through chapter 18 here. And it changes, flows from one topic kind of to the other as it goes through here. So we get this warning, and this is a little child now still for all this warning about causing a fellow Christian to sin. The word here is stumble, cause him to stumble, a stumbling block, a hindrance to one. And now the little child has become really a symbol for a young believer or a new convert. Look in verse 3. He uses the word converted. Unless you are converted and come as little children, that is, you're changed. I meant to look this up before I got it in here. I didn't do it. There's one of these passages where it says, use the word believe. So it's not this little child, because someone who we're talking about here has to be someone who can believe in him. So I should have found it for you. I'm sorry. 6, is that where it is? Okay. We would call it one who believes in me. They say new convert or a inexperienced member. They just use a little child here to symbolize and talk about. They say believer, but one that could be easily have a stumbling block put in front of or hindrance, a weaker saint here. It's represented by this little one here. So Jesus said, you cause one of these to stumble, you'd be better off if you had this millstone cast around your neck and thrown in the sea. Around here, kind of our country talk here, with someone tie a couple of concrete blocks around your neck, throw you in the river. Okay, I've heard that from my younger days growing up, I guess. Instead of a millstone, we don't use millstones that much anymore. Be better if you'd already died. Be better if he hadn't been around to do that. Okay, and here's a couple of pictures of millstones. One here, one here. The point is, enough to weigh you down. You don't come back up.
Hey, Wayne.
Yes, sure.
I do agree with what you said as far as, talking about a little one, but I kind of got the idea that, Jesus expects anyone who's going to be a follower has to humble himself.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't know if it just only applies to maybe an inexperienced family, a young believer, maybe anyone who is a follower, who humbles himself. I mean, I agree.
No, I get your point, and I don't care how experienced or how long you've been a Christian, how much you know. If I cause you to stumble, I've committed something. I think he's used the illustration here of the young child just to illustrate the fact that the weaker member, someone that you could easily make to stumble, you shouldn't do it. Okay. Now, I think it's a broad application, as you say, you can go across. I shouldn't do something. Someone looks up to me, I shouldn't do anything, and I've got on one of the screens here in a minute. He says, cut away your hand, pluck out your eye. I'm going to find this other point right quick. No, I don't. I'll get to it in a minute. I got too much stuff to get to, but I agree, Oscar, that there's nothing that I should do for someone who's looking up to me that would, about what I say or do or actions or anything, that would be a hindrance to them. If it is, I'm the one he's talking about with a millstone. Not just the little ones, but anywhere there. So, let me go ahead and finish up. Millstones. He said offenses are going to come. There are going to be trials and tribulations and hindrances come. You're going to hit roadblocks. You're going to hit stumbling blocks. And he says, woe to those by who they come. They're going to come. Just don't you be one of the ones who makes them come and causes another Christian to sin or to stumble. They're going to come. There are going to be bumps in our lives, things that come up, but don't you be the one that causes those things to happen. That's the warning I think he's giving here. So if it comes to that point that you need to cut off your hand or your foot or pluck out your eye to stop from doing that, then do it. Now, I don't know if he's really talking about physically cutting off your hand or your foot. Maybe so. Maybe we should, all of us, go to that point that if that's what it takes to stop me from causing someone else to sin, I should do that. I really think it's an illustration of the heart problem. He's just using the physical extremes to get the point of the heart. Change yourself where you don't do that. Job, I don't scream, Job said, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look on the young virgin. Worship. I have a talk with my eyes. I mean, what he's saying. Well, I don't have a talk with my eyes. We don't do that, literally. But that's what Job's saying. I have a talk with my eyes. I said, eyes, don't do this. Which I've decided ahead of time, I won't do this, Job's saying. The same thing with us. I've decided ahead of time, I won't do something with my hands or my feet or my whatever that's going to cause someone to stumble. I do that by getting my heart right. He says, better off that you do this thing, you cut your hand, cut your foot, cut your whatever off, than do this. Because if you do that, if you cause someone to stumble and wind up in being cast in everlasting fire. This is from Mark's version of this thing now. Mark 9. He says, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. Where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. This is the city of Jerusalem. Coming down the the east side over here is a valley we're very familiar with, the Kidron Valley. Across this valley is the Mount of Olives, Garden of Gethsemane, all these things that we read about and deal with a lot. Coming more across the south side down here is the Hinnom Valley. We don't talk about it very much, the Valley of Hinnom. But that, back in this time, was the dunghill, the garbage dump. And there was a fire there that burned, according to what I read, about around the clock, as it burned up as a refuge from the city. And maggots would be in dead things that were cast out there and things like this. So there's thus the verse where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. Relating here something that they could understand. Now, I haven't seen the Valley of Hinnom, but that's all from everything that I read would tie back to that. Now, here's what it looks now. A lot better than what it did at that time. But that's the illustration Jesus is using to them about how bad it's going to be for you if you cause one of these people to stumble. So he alludes here, but without directly saying it, he alludes to eternal punishment. I'm using the fire here as the one that goes on and on and on and on and on and on, doesn't stop. Somebody got a comment about this, just jump in here somewhere. Starting next then in verse 11, the Son of Man came to save the lost. He gave his life for it. Get this point. Jesus gave his life for any individuals you will see anywhere that you run into them. How much, if he gave his life for that, if he gave his life for one who's trying to be a Christian, and I'm putting the stumbling block there, think about what I've done. I have caused one to sin by my actions that Jesus is willing to die for. My influence, my example, my words spoken. That's this I was looking for a while ago when I was flipping through the slides. So Jesus is willing to die for that person. And here I am, by something I've done, I've caused that person to stumble, to sin, by my actions. Jesus says, woe to you. Be better off if you had a millstone around your neck and you was dead than to do that. And he relates it in to the shepherd leaving the 99 sheep there in the pasture and going to find that one that strayed off and is somewhere out on the mountainside. He didn't know where. But he leaves the 99 to go get that one. Why? Why? What about the 99? No, that one's important. That one's important. So he leaves the 99 to go find the one and bring it back to the fold. All right, starting in 15, we get into some verses that are oftentimes made to be controversial when there's absolutely no reason why they should be. Jesus said, look at the top of the screen, the title across the top. If a brother sins against you, if a brother sins against me, someone does me wrong, sinfully, somebody sins against me, go to him and tell him his fault. I go to him. He sinned against me. It's not him coming to me and saying, I'm sorry. No, he sinned against me. I'm going to him. And we have a talk, one-on-one, just me and him. And what's the purpose? Look at the verse. What's the purpose? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to gain my brother. So, someone sins against me. I go to him, one-on-one. I talk to him, trying to establish a relationship and gain the brother who has sinned. The word sin's got to come in here. Not just somebody hurt my feelings. I could deal with that too, but not in the same depth that we did in here. A brother sins against me. I go to him, tell him what he's done, talk to him one-on-one to try to resolve the situation and get that sin out of his life. Everybody with that so far? So why don't we do it? Why don't we do it? What we do? What's the easy thing to do? So when that person talked to him about it, who did I tell? Well, I tell this one, I tell that one. You know, so here it goes. Or if I do go to him, how do I approach him when I get there? Let me set you straight now. What you should have done, my Bible, no sir, you were wrong. No. Go read Galatians 6. This is a more generalized statement. What does it say though? Look at yourself, sir. You may be the one that sinned one of these days. Therefore, go to him with a gentle approach. Whether we don't do it, talk to everybody else about it, or we go to him, I don't say it always. This is the general classification. If we go to him, go to straighten him out because you stand against me. Now, if we do this first part and the little green box up there, this next part will never be necessary if we could work this out. If I went to him with the right attitude, the right approach, could show him how he sinned and why he sinned, and his attitude is right, it's going to be resolved right there. We ain't got to go any further. Sometimes it won't. So now I get one or two to go with me, and they can listen. They can understand what he's saying, understand what I'm saying. We try to resolve the situation. That doesn't work. Now it's interesting, the church has not been established yet, but look what it says. Now you go tell it to the church, to the assembly. The time that Matthew was written, of course it had been. But still, what's the overall purpose? I'm not telling the church to make a big issue out of it. What I'm trying to do is what? Bring more influence to try to get him back. That's the whole purpose of all this thing. It's to stop the sin. James Burton Coughlin made in his commentary wrote this. It is a solemn conviction of this expositor that many of the divisions and sorrows that have come upon the church of our generation will have been prevented by due regard to our Lord's words in this and related verses. When Christ's plan is tried, the usual result is gaining the offending brother. But when Christ's plan is thwarted, when public condemnations have been sounded abroad, it is then often too late to redeem the offending brother. His pride, his feelings, his reputation are already compromised, making it exceedingly more difficult to effect a humble admission of his wrong and a penitent return to the truth. Very well said. Thoughts from anybody about this particular point? It's a quiet bunch tonight. All right, I got a couple more. If I get time to get them done, we might get kind of caught up tonight. Starting in verse 21, Peter wants to know, my brother sins against me, how many times should I forgive him? 7 times? That's a lot, man. No, Jesus said, well, let's talk about forgive first. We'll get there. What does it mean to forgive? What does it mean to forgive? We usually don't quite get this definition right either. To forgive is to treat as though the offense was not committed. To declare that we will not harbor malice or treat him unkindly, but the matter shall be buried and forgotten. If he repents, ask my forgiveness, and I forgive him, should be a done, clean slate done. Why would you want to hang on to it? Do you want God to hang on to yours? Jesus said no, 70 times 7. I want some translations say 70 plus 7. I think so this time. It's translated 2 different ways, but the point is it's unlimited. It's his duty to ask for forgiveness. If he does this, it's our duty to declare we forgive him and treat him accordingly. If he does not ask forgiveness, we're not at liberty to follow him with revenge and malice. We're still to treat him kindly and do him good. What am I trying to do if he sinned? I'm trying to get him back. It doesn't do me any good to be mean and ugly to him, right? I just made it worse.
This might be open a can of worms, but off of what this commentary says here, is it suggesting that if this man never does ask for forgiveness, that we should hold this, or should we forgive and move on?
I think how I answered that question. I don't know the answer. I'll tell you how I answer it. It's kind of like it's got it up here. If my attitude toward him is that I am waiting for you to ask for forgiveness and you've got it as soon as you ask for it, okay? So my attitude is, it's over. I'm going to treat you kindly. I'm going to treat you right. Whether you ask for it or not, I'm going to treat you as if you had asked for it. Now, we know it's still there because you haven't asked for forgiveness. Does God forgive me before I ask him? That brings up a whole different kind of worms, as you say there. This thing of continuous cleansing and all that gets big discussions. So I don't know the answer to that totally. I know what I think my attitude should be. That is, if you sin against me, I am standing here waiting for you to ask forgiveness, and when you do, you've got it. So my attitude is, I'm going to treat you just as though you had asked for it, even though we both know it hadn't happened. Go ahead.
In the case of somebody who has fallen away and who discontinued fellowship with them.
Different ballgame. If they've been disfellowshipped, then I've got to remember that church action then comes in to play there. That doesn't mean now that I'm going to treat him ugly and nasty when I see him at the grocery store. I mean, I still need, what's the whole purpose of the church disfellowship and the disciplinary acts against him? It's to get him back, right? So if I shun him and totally disregard him and never speak to him, how much is that going to help let him know I still care about you, come back? Now, I'm not going to associate with him in a fellowship type way. He's going to know that. He's going to understand that. He's going to know that he's been marked as one who was walking disorderly, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be mean to him. And sometimes I think we get that wrong too. This guy's in marked, okay. We'll go back to the Quakers, Amish, whatever, that when you've been shunned, you're shunned. I can't speak to you. I turn my back on you all the time. I don't think it's what it is, personally. Some may probably disagree with me, but what am I trying to do? I'm trying to show loving kindness to get him back. I'm the father standing there waiting for the prodigal son to come back. I want him to come back. So I'm going to treat him with kindness when I see him. He's going to understand there's a problem still that you need to straighten out. But I'm going to be ugly to him about it. That makes sense. I don't know. Anybody may disagree with that. Go ahead.
Yeah. When you asked that question, the message, I kind of thought about Jesus and Stephen both. And maybe in Jesus' case, it's different because Jesus actually has has the authority to forgive. But in case in Stephen, Stephen says, don't charge them with the sin. So I think Stephen is saying, God, on my half, I forgive them, if they ever come and if they ever repent of their sin, what they've done.
Yes.
Just, I guess Stephen's saying they're forgiven by me. Ultimately, doesn't, in a sense, matter whether we forgive or not. It's ultimately God
Right.
who's going to,
Sin separated, it may be toward me, but sin separated them from God. And whether they ever reconcile it with me or not, they got to reconcile it with God. If I'm still around, they got to reconcile it to God, in my opinion, by reconciling it with me. Stephen's not going to be around, like you say, he's getting stoned. So he said, okay, as far as I'm concerned, wipe their slate clean as soon as you make it right, they make it right with you. Good point.
Of course, that Matthew 6, if we want God to forgive us,
That's right.
we have to be willing.
I think that's coming up here. Okay. My Heavenly Father, do you, if you from the heart don't forgive your brother, how's God going to handle us if we don't forgive those who sin against us? That's kind of what it boils down to. Okay, we'll get this pick up with this one next time here with the last part of this. Mark at Matthew 8's got to be wrong. It's got to be 18. I'm sorry. I'll fix